All right, everyone, we are going live here. If we could just do a little audio check. If you could type in the chat box below, if you can hear me, that would be super awesome. We do have a little bit of a delay, just a few seconds, and that's just so the audio and video sync up nicely for you. I am so excited to get started. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes till I get a nice audio check here. And the next thing I want to do, oh, Kim says she hears me. That's great. So always want to make sure that the microphone is working. I like to always start with just a real quick icebreaker. Regardless of whether or not you know me or not, I'd love to have a couple silly questions thrown out at me in the chat box. And that just helps break the ice and loosen me up a little bit. Great. I am so glad that everyone can hear me just fine, and then we can get started today. Let's see here. I'm going to tell you just a few things while we wait for you guys to ask me a silly question or two. Right here in the classroom area, there's two things that I want to point out to you, and I'll do this again when we get into the slides, and that's the red button, the submit a question button. That's where you can press that. It'll pop open in a new window where you can ask me questions, and I'll be monitoring that on a different screen. I've got a spreadsheet going right here where those will pop up automatically for me. And then here, the chat box below, you do have to log in to chat, but it's a login via any social channel, or you can even log in as a guest and just type in your name. Great. I am so thrilled to have so many people here with me tonight for our webinar on practical planning for scrapbookers. All right, here. So wait a couple more minutes until folks get online. I'm seeing the numbers go up. We're up to 85. So we had just about 100 during our afternoon session. And so that's always super fun to have folks chatting and sharing ideas. One thing to note is, again, the reason I do have the submit a question button is because I'm not able to monitor the chat as closely as I would like. And therefore, you guys can chat amongst yourselves, but I'll be answering questions primarily from the questions that are submitted. And that's just because the more people we get in here, the more the little chit chat will get going, and I won't be able to see what you're saying. All right. So we have no silly questions, but that's okay. I will share one silly piece of information, and that is that I have a very lovely new Nalgene bottle. I am super excited about it. It's sweating here because I have a ton of ice in it, and I got this because my doctor recommended that I start taking calcium supplements because I'm old now. So this was my reward for taking horse pills twice a day. All right, so that's my silly piece of trivia for you today. Let's get started. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch to a presentation view, and then at the very end, I will come back on, and I'll be able to talk with you again during the Q&A period. Someone had a question, is there a way to see you and the chat at the same time? They are, I guess, stacked on top of each other for you. If your screen's not quite large enough for that, you could open a second window, a duplicate window of the same URL, and place them side by side on your screen. And I would just then mute one of those videos so that you're not getting a duplicate sound. I know in the earlier session, that's what some of the folks did. My screen happens to be large enough that I can see both at the same time. So I apologize if that's not as convenient for you. All right, okay, I'm gonna switch the screens here. Go to the screen share. All right. We are presenting. Okay. All right, so welcome to Practical Planning for Scrapbookers. My name is Jennifer Wilson, and I am your instructor here today. In this approximately 1 hour session, I'm really excited to help you learn some practical approaches for planning your days, weeks, months, and years. And if you're not familiar with Simple Scrapper, what we do here is we focus on taking a purposeful approach to your hobby. It's not just about simple as a style, but about using this idea of simplicity as a way to create more focus and intention around how we approach our hobbies and how they fit into the larger context of our lives. How can we find this very important me time that we need so much to feel happy and whole and feel like strong women and good moms. And having that downtime is so important. And so it's talking a lot about the lifestyle issues that go into being a happy and healthy, productive scrapbooker. So again, I want to reiterate that there are two important parts here in the classroom area. The first one is the red submit a question button. I'm not able to monitor the chat as closely as I would like. So if you would click the submit a question button, I will be able to monitor those. And towards the end of the presentation, I will answer questions for you. And I love answering questions and being able to provide a customized response to what you need most. So please don't hesitate to ask anything at all. And then we also have the chat box below where you guys can talk amongst yourselves. And I see that's already happening here. One of the first questions I asked when we popped on was, where are you from? And so I would love to hear where you're from as well. I am here in central Illinois, where we're having a little bit of a milder weather this week. So that's nice because I know it's going to get really cold. All right. So who am I? Again, my name is Jennifer Wilson. I'm the owner here at Simple Scrapper. I founded Simple Scrapper in 2008 as a way to approach scrapbooking in a little bit of a different way. And I talked briefly on that. When I came into scrapbooking, I had tried it before, but the traditional methods of paper scrapbooking and kind of that old style of the late 90s, early 2000s didn't quite fit for me. At that time, I was in my 20s and I wanted something a little bit modern and fresh, but also that fit within my busy lifestyle. So I actually came into this industry as a digital scrapbooker because I saw digital as a potential time-saving tool that would allow you to be a scrapbooker while doing it in an efficient way, particularly if you don't have a lot of space or time or money. But what I learned over the years is that that's not the only way to simplify the hobby, that paper scrapbookers can be just as simple in this kind of larger context as digital scrapbookers. And so I broadened my approach for Simple Scrapper to be all the approaches that we use in our lives and in our hobby in order to make it sustainable and fun and stay motivated all the time. And so I come at this from a science background. I have a bachelor's and a master's, both in environmental science. And so I have this analytical training and analytical approach to my brain that I bring to the hobby. Whereas others focus a lot on design or techniques, which are very valid and very interesting parts of what we do as creatives. That's not where I focus because my strengths are in breaking things down and being able to help you develop plans and adjust your processes so they work better for you. All right. Got a little ahead of myself there. So one of the reasons I wanted to have this training today is because there's some common roadblocks that I see in our hobby and some problems that I see people having. Libby says that she has trouble staying focused and organized and that she really wants to deal with that in the new year. And this idea that we have too many distractions is very common. So if you feel that way, you're quite normal. And I just want to say that there between even, lost my train of thought here. We have distractions outside of the computer from our lives and our families. And then of course we have the many, many distractions on the computer. And so everything that you can do to stay focused on what you want to achieve and will help you move forward. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Another common roadblock is maintaining your enthusiasm throughout the year. So often we'll see your interest and excitement about scrapbooking ebb and flow throughout the seasons. Certain times of the year you may have more interest and more activity than others, and that's normal. And we'll talk a little bit about how to adjust and account for that. And then of course, both of these lead to a common problem of lack of action. Gina mentions that she really wants to finish her unfinished projects, and Diane doesn't have trouble making a plan, which I suspect many of you are similar to her, but she has trouble executing that plan. How do you go from these ideas and great concepts to actually making it happen and making it real? All right. So today, there are some really key takeaways that I want to leave you with at the end. And that's one, is that the sense of ease and peacefulness around your hobby and in your life is very possible, and that a practical approach to planning can help you get there. And that this idea of planning can also help you find more time and hold more space and time for yourself so that you can relax and reflect and enjoy your hobby. And that you can also balance that with making forward progress and achieving your goals. When so often I hear that there's a conflict between having a sense of simplicity and ease and being an achiever. But I really don't think there is. It's about finding this unique balance that fills you with creative joy and gives you a sense that you have a purposeful life that includes scrapbooking. Because we're scrapbookers not just because we like to make things. We're scrapbookers because we like to make things and it's important to us. Unlike so many other hobbies, scrapbooking is so unique in that it is tied to our everyday lives and the stories that we're living. So it's such a unique hobby, which is why I kind of take this little bit of a methodical and analytical approach, because I know that we can break it down and give you an even deeper and more meaningful experience. So one thing I want to reiterate here, and I mentioned this in some conversations before the webinar, is that this presentation here and the concepts that I'm sharing are really for everyone. I'm focusing on a particular strategy that will help you look at planning both at the large and longer time scales down to the daily time scales in a little bit different way, and in a way that I think will help you feel like you understand how to do it better. And that's a common question I get, is that I don't get what I'm supposed to be planning on a day-to-day basis and how to bring scrapbooking into that. And so this training is for everyone, whether you're a digital scrapbooker or a paper scrapbooker, and whether you do planning with an app or another electronic device, or you actually use a paper planner. And I'll show you in a little bit how this all fits together. So I don't want, before you assume that because Jennifer's a paper scrapbooker or Jennifer uses this app for that or this planner for that, that you've opted out of what I'm teaching here. It's really an all-encompassing approach that can even be used for other aspects of your life as well. All right. So the foundation of what we're going to talk about here is the practical planning cascade. And so what this is, it's not complicated, it's actually quite simple. It's this idea that we can take kind of a top-down approach, a big picture, going down to small scale. First, we have what you do. This is the universe of what you're doing in your hobby. All the projects, all the types of supplies that you use, the stories that you're telling. And it excludes all the things that you're not doing. When you have that in mind, when you know what it is that you want to do, you can figure out when to do it. This is the next step down. And you can't do it in reverse, because if you can't think, oh, I'm going to scrapbook, if you don't know what you're going to scrapbook about or how you're going to approach it, that's when you get stuck. And then, of course, we have the doing step. This is the final step of taking action. And here's how this fits into planning. I like you to think about what you do on roughly an annual time scale. And that looks like once a year going in and basically doing an assessment of your hobby. And we like to do that this time of year, which is why we're having this webinar. When you take some time to pause and really reflect on what's working and what's not working, you can take steps forward so that you can even improve kind of the whole spectrum of your hobby. And one of the common things that I hear is that, I never can keep up with, say, something like project life. And I have fun with it, but it doesn't work for me. So in this annual time scale, you can look at what's working and what's not with project life and figure out how Pocket Pages may or may not fit into your hobby in the future. So then the next scale is the when you're going to do it. And I like to look at this on a seasonal time scale. So every 3 months, you reevaluate when you're going to take action on the types of projects that are important to you. If you start at the beginning of the year and say, I'm going to do this throughout the year, how often does that happen? So often our interest kind of fades by April or May, sometimes even by beginning of March. So when you take a seasonal approach instead of a full year approach at figuring out when to do something, you actually have a better chance of getting it done. And then finally, the doing. This happens in your real life on the weekly and daily timescales. This is where you really bring in and connect the day-to-day planning and list that you're making with your hobby. And we'll go through this as we go forward as well. Before we do take a step forward, I want to see if there's any additional questions. I want to check here in the submitted questions to see if there's anything else. Taking a drink of water here too. Someone asked if the chat window does not work on an iPad. I did test it on my phone, and so that should work similarly to iPad because this is an iPhone and it worked there. So I do apologize if you're having any difficulties. It should work though. Regardless, even if the chat box cannot work, you can submit a question for me as you have done, and I'm happy to answer that for you live. All right, here. Okay, let's keep going. So the first step in the Cascade was the what to do. And I'm framing this as mapping the boundaries of your scrapbooking universe. And so what this looks like, and this is why I've chosen the photo here of my albums, this looks like figuring out the projects that are going to be on your horizon for the next year. The projects you're going to finish, the projects you're going to keep working on, the projects you're going to start, the projects you might do during certain times of the year, like December daily, or maybe you'll do a summer album. It's thinking about, what do I want my hobby to look like in the next year? And so here's some of the questions that I like you to ask. What have I done? This is the retrospective. What did I do last year? What do I want to do going forward? What can I do? What is actually realistic? And what will I do? This is the decision-making step. So this is actually a cycle here. You go through it again and again every year to do kind of an assessment of the past and then a forward look. And this is how you plan on this annual time scale. And there's also an important component to this as well. That's the flip side questions. What have I not done? What do I not want to do? What can't I do because it's not realistic, or I'm not interested anymore, or what will I not do? And that's that decision making. One of the most important decisions you can make as a scrapbooker is to not do something. So much of the guilt that I see in our hobby is because people are have self-selected into doing something that they actually don't really want to do because they feel like they have to or they're expected to. And so often I find that if you take a step back, you can fulfill that sense of obligation in another way that's more fulfilling and is more enjoyable to you as a scrapbooker. Oftentimes, if you have been scrapbooking for a long time, you may feel that, and this is just an example here, that you have to create a layout for basically every story in your life. and that everything has to be a 12 by 12 layout that fits into an album. And that's just not true in this day and age. While I can see the pull towards uniformity, there are so many options today for you to be a scrapbooker that it doesn't make sense to force yourself into an unsustainable pattern. You can create photo books, you can create photo collages, you can share photos on Facebook, you can create digital layouts, you can create paper layouts, you can do pocket pages. I mean, there's so many options, and I know you're familiar with them, but it's about looking at how you want to approach a story and figuring out what is the best format for this, and actually which formats are not going to work for me either at all or maybe less often. So over the years, I've switched from doing all layouts to layouts and pocket pages, and layouts and pocket pages and photo collages, and layouts and pocket pages, photo collages, and photo books, because that works better for me and allows me to tell more of the stories that I want to tell in less time and feel like I'm staying caught up with my hobby. And I don't have that sense of guilt because I have these alternate ways of feeling like my stories are told. All right, so this is what that looks like in practice. It's another way of displaying it. So you have layouts, you have project life, you have mini albums, maybe you have cards, you have photo books, you have other types of creative hobbies. They're not going to all fit into your bucket. So you have to filter them out and figure out what's going to come out the other end and be on your list of 2016 projects, because you can't do it all as much as you want. You just can't. There's not enough time. So you have to make decisions about what's exciting, what's interesting, what's working well for you. All right, so with that in mind, we can go to step 2. And step 2 is embracing the seasonal perspective on your creative life. And while this time of year, seasonal can sometimes mean Christmas and the holiday season, like I've shown here in the photo, it's really about taking a 3-month look, a 3-month horizon on your hobby, and not trying to plan too far out, because you just can't predict what life is going to be like. You don't know what your child's school life is going to be like next fall. You don't know what types of health situations you may face. There'll be a lot of different things going on, and that all affects your interest and excitement and enthusiasm for scrapbooking. So when you can plan 3 months out, you're more likely to select projects that are exciting to you right now, that fit within your time scale right now, and therefore you're more likely to actually finish them. And that's what we all want here, is to actually finish what we start. So one of the reasons I'm focusing so much on the seasonal perspective is that a few months ago, I actually started a little bit of a research study. I did a beta test of 124 respondents, and these were, I chose to look at Northern Hemisphere individuals only, so that I knew we were talking about the same seasons. And I'll blow this up for you. What I did is I asked for each season, winter, spring, summer, and fall, can you rate your enthusiasm for planning, organizing, and scrapbooking? And when I did this, we saw this curve here. So our kind of general gut feeling that enthusiasm changes throughout the year was actually shown in the data. That in the summer, our enthusiasm for doing, well, all of these things is the lowest, whereas in the winter and fall, our enthusiasm is a little bit higher. And so to me, this is so fascinating, because I love how we can adjust our personal expectations for our hobby and ourselves, and even, our whole surrounding life, based on our interests. It doesn't have to be one straight line throughout the year, and that you have to always be scrapbooking the same amount, or you always have to be perfectly organized. You can ride these waves. The highest interest in organizing, not surprisingly, happens in the spring. So you should do most of your organizing in the spring and kind of coast the rest of the year. So when you take this seasonal perspective, you can go with your kind of natural rhythm so that you don't feel like you're fighting against it always. All right. So I've mentioned this a little bit, but the idea here is that we're trying to find the intersection between what fills you up right now, what's really getting you excited about the hobby. Oops, going the wrong direction. Sorry about that. And what fits your life. Because when you're thinking about the scrapbook projects that you're going to do in the next 3 months, what fills you up and fits your life now may be different than it was 3 months ago. And that may change again 3 months in the future. You have different stories to tell, different products in front of you, different time commitments on your calendar. So when you look in this time frame, you're better able to select projects that fit squarely at the intersection of those. And those are the projects that are really going to make you happy and feel continuously excited about your hobby. All right. So the next thing here is an example, and you'll see a series of these throughout this presentation. These are my little sticky note examples. And I wanted to use these partly as illustration to show that planning can be done as simply as on a sticky note. You don't necessarily have to have a $100 fancy planner in order to be effective at planning. You can have a notebook, you can have a pad of sticky notes, you can have an app on your phone, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So you can see here my example is of things that are not a current priority. So for me, because of other things that I do want to do during these last 3 months of the year, finishing my 2015 project life, I chose that to not be a priority. By acknowledging that this isn't on my plate, I don't think about it when I sit down to scrapbook. I don't worry that, oh, I really should be working on that because I want to finish. Yes, I want to finish, and I will finish early in 2016, but right now, it's not a priority. Right now, it's not a priority to start this album with my husband for his childhood. We're probably going to start that again after the first of the year. And it's also not a priority right now to reorganize my stamps. I'm consistently feeling pulled that I want to do this, but it's really not a priority, and mostly because I just don't have time. So it needs to wait. And so every time I feel that compulsion to window shop for a new solution, I can say, no, stop. This isn't a priority. It can wait. And that's what I do. So the flip side of that is these are my priorities. This season, I really want to focus on cleaning up my photo library so that I can, in part, finish that Project Life project early next year, but just so that I can feel more ready for a new year. I want to really enjoy my December daily project because this is a creative activity that I really enjoy and always seems exciting to me. I want to finish 5 layouts, of which I've already finished one of those. And I wanted to order 3 photo books, and I've already done that. So by having this larger concept of what I'm going to do over the year, and then what I'm not going to do this season, I can then back into, these are my priorities for right now. This is what I'm going to focus on. So when I sit down to make my schedule for a week or a day, I have an idea of what's important right now. All right. So let's pause here, and before we go on to step 3, I want to see if there's any more questions that have come in, and take a little drink here. Hopefully everyone's still doing well. We've got more than 100 folks on with me, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me today. So we'll keep going here to number 3. Step 3 here is where we're going to spend most of our time. And I think you'll have this is where we're going to really connect these conceptual ideas, some of which, if you've been around a while, you may have heard before. It's kind of some of the foundational principles that I work on. This is how we're going to connect those with the day-to-day. How do you actually put this into play when you make a list for what you're going to do today? So, and I want to reiterate here that what we're trying to do is, how do you connect this real life planning? And for most of you, your kind of perspective on planning may be just planning your everyday. I have a doctor's appointment. I need to take the kids to school. I need to complete this form. You're thinking about planning based on your responsibilities, but you may not have yet brought your hobbies into your planning. And so what's going to happen here is once they become part of your day-to-day to-do list, that's when they stay top of mind. That's when you stay forward moving, and you're able to feel like you're more satisfied overall because it's well integrated into your life and not something that you hope to someday finally get to when you have time. So here's another one of my sticky notes. These are my priorities this week. And so what we're doing here is I'm going to be sharing you some lists for the weekly time scale as well as the daily time scale. So this week, some of my priorities are house cleaning, finish the gift shopping, printing my December daily photos, writing 4 blog posts. I need to do 2 new press releases, and I want to get better sleep. And so this is kind of a weekly time scale, not necessarily assigned to a day, but things that are important for me to get done this week. And you can see that I've got work, I've got creative time, I've got personal, and even self-care in here, all on my priority list. And then here's how that trickles down to a specific list for today. I want to get groceries before 9 a.m. I want to deliver 2 webinars. I want to vacuum the upstairs. Now notice how I'm being very, very specific here. I'm not just vacuuming, I'm vacuuming upstairs. I'm not just getting groceries, but I'm giving myself a time so that I don't put it off and not get it done. I'm printing days 4 through 7 of my December daily photos. So I'm being really specific so that I know when this task is done. I want to complete the dance form, though it could wait because it's not due to the 29th. And I do want to try to disconnect by 10 p.m. So by having this list, even if I get 80% of this list done, I'll be really happy because it's short and it is based in my priorities that have trickled down all the way from my annual plans of December daily is something that I want to be part of my scrapbooking because I know I enjoy it and it fills me up. All right, so the tools that you can use to do your planning can be varied. And what I want to emphasize here is that no matter which tool you use, whether it's a notebook, a Filofax planner, that's a ring or a disc bound planner, a fully spiral bound planner, or even a bullet journal or a traveler's notebook, whatever kind of paper planning you're doing, it's really just about making lists. It's about creating lists of ideas, creating lists of plans, and keeping this item with you so that you can follow up on it. So that doesn't even have to be paper. You could be using Evernote or Asana, Trello, or Wunderlist. The first 3 of those are more project management tools, and Wunderlist is just one example of the many to-do list managers. Usually the difference between the two is a project manager is going to allow you to store a greater hierarchy or layers of information with lists in those, whereas a simple to-do list manager may not be as complex. So what these are going to have in common, and things that you need to think about when you're selecting a tool, is that it needs to be easy for you to update. If it's too difficult to figure out or to remember to use, you're not going to use it. You want to be able to carry it with you, or at least have a system for getting information into that planner. You want to like the design of it. Now, something I see that happens too often is that you purchase something solely based on the design. And while I put it here because I think it is a really valid consideration, it's just one of the 5 that you need to have in order for your planner to really work for you in a practical sense. The planner itself, whether it's digital or paper, needs to have the appropriate spaces that fit the things that you do in your life. One of the reasons I see that people stop using planners is because the configuration of the boxes, whether it's boxes being there or not being there, the size of the boxes, they just don't fit the things that you're writing down. And then finally, is that the type of planner you choose should be as simple as it needs to be. So that means it could be very complicated or it could be super simple. It could be a very simple to-do list on a sticky note. So you need to figure out what type of planning situation really meets your needs. And that could be that you don't have to have just one tool. You could use a combination of tools. For example, I use Asana to do project management for my business that allows me to work with a team and create these ongoing lists of ideas and projects we're working on. But that's not what I use on a day-to-day basis. I use it to house that information. And then on a day-to-day basis, I use a paper planner to keep track of everything that I'm doing on a weekly and daily basis. All right, here. So the bottom line is that when you select a tool that really works for you, whether that's a paper or a digital tool, it will allow you to know exactly where to begin. When you sit down to scrapbook and you don't have this cascade in place, that's where you get stuck, because you're not sure which projects you're supposed to be working on, which time frame you're working on them. So it's just all kind of a jumbled mess. You feel pulled in so many different directions, and you end up feeling like you're not inspired, and then you go on Pinterest to look for inspiration, and then before you know it, it's time for bed. So by having a plan, you'll know exactly where to begin because you know the next thing on your list. So on my list, the next thing I need to do is print days 4 through 7 of December daily. So I know that's the next thing I do when I have time to spend on my memory keeping. And then the companion to this is that when you use these tools, you'll reduce decision fatigue. And this is really, no matter what tool you use, when you have a planning system in place, you'll have to make fewer decisions throughout the day, which will reduce your level of exhaustion at the end of the day. Meaning, when it's 9 p.m. and the kids are finally in bed and you have an hour to yourself, you might actually feel energized enough to scrapbook. So if you take one thing away from this training today, that's using planning in your life, whether for your scrapbooking or not, is going to help you feel more in control and less tired so that you actually can get to the scrapbooking later. It's all about creating a lifestyle around planning so that you feel in control and you have a sense of time and space held for your hobby, and you feel easeful and restful about it and not anxious and frustrated and guilty. So I just said that. It'll help you hold that space for the me time at the end of the day. And particularly if you mark your scrapbooking time on your calendar, that Friday night from 8 to 10 is when I'm scrapbooking consistently. That will help you say no to other opportunities that may be optional. Even if you do want to do them, it will help you say no because you've already made a commitment to yourself for this hobby that's important to you. And then finally, when you have this planning approach in place, you'll have this greater sense overall that you've spent your time well. I mean, that's how we all want to end our days and our weeks and our months and our years, right? That we knew what we were doing, we made some good progress, we enjoyed life, and time was spent well. We'll reduce those feelings of overwhelm and guilt and frustration because we're all kind of frazzled and not sure what to work on. All right, here. So we're going to transition here. I do need to take another drink of water after 2 sessions and reading my daughter 3 stories tonight. My voice is a little bit going here. What I do want to do is I want to encourage you to submit questions for me using the red Submit a Question button. In a few minutes, we'll transition into that Q&A period, and I love answering questions. No question is too large or too crazy or too dumb or even too personal. I hope I can be helpful to you as we talk a little bit more about planning during the discussion period. I do want to, if you would oblige me for a few moments, talk a little bit about a couple things we offer here at Simple Scrapper. One thing is our Simple Scrapper Planner. Over the years, I had developed a planner that has traditionally been available only to our members. And this year, for the first time, I'm offering it as a standalone purchase. It is a set of printable planning inserts designed for a ring or disc-bound planner, or even a clipboard if that's your planning tool of choice. And it's really been designed for you as a scrapbooker. It includes pages that are idea and project capture for your hobby, and project prioritization and planning for your seasons, as well as the traditional monthly, daily, weekly calendars and planning pages. So it allows you to integrate your hobby with your overall planning approach. And I've already said this already, it allows you to capture ideas as well as make plans on kind of integrated place. And it's a totally flexible option because it is printable at home and it comes in 5 different sizes. One of the reasons I love a 6-ring or 4-ring or 3-ring type of binder planner is that pages can be put in and out. I don't like the restriction of a truly fully bound planner because usually someone else is deciding what's going in that planner and then I'm stuck with it. By having this flexible option of your own printable planning pages, you can include as many pages of each type as you like. You can customize the fronts and backs. Like for example, I print a lot of grid paper on the backs of certain pages so that I have extra places to draw. And so it allows you to create a fully customizable planner. And I just don't know what other type of company does that for you. The planner is a $24 standalone purchase, or if you purchase with a membership, it is still included. And that's one of the things that I think our members love about the membership is that so many things are included with it. And another example of that is our refresh workshops. This is a brand new workshop series. We just beta tested it with the members recently and it had some glowing reviews. 98% said they would participate again. The refresh workshops are an opportunity to reset your scrapbooking every single season. They'll be taking place in January, April, July, and October of next year. These are a 7-day experience that combines a workshop with a retreat feel, with a little bit of a challenge thrown in to make it exciting and a little bit intensive. So the refresh workshops combine some of the activities I've done before. I had taught these events called Start Fresh and Stash Bash, and these take the best of those and bring them into one 7-day experience where you'll do some planning, some organizing, and some making, and totally feel renewed and invigorated about your hobby. The refresh workshops will be $59, sold as a standalone class, or they are also included with membership at Simple Scrapper. And one of the reasons I wanted to host this training is to let you know about a December membership special that I have going on. As I said, membership comes with the planner and any updates. It comes with 4 workshops throughout the year, a monthly magazine, our huge resource library that has more than 200 sketches and storytelling prompts, and our wonderful, loyal, and supportive community. And it's normally $15 a month, but I'm doing this special just this month that's $36 for 3 months. And I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about that for you. You can join at simplescrapper.com/join, but you don't have to worry about remembering that URL because I will email it out to you later as well. And it will be also on the replay page. I'll pop it in the box for you here. All right, and there the link is on this page as well, simplescrapper.com/join. So at this time, I'd be happy to take your questions. I'm really looking forward to getting into a little bit of a discussion with you. If you go to the submit a question button, that's where you can pop open a new window and send me your questions. All right, I'm gonna switch back to the visual view here so that we can have a more personal conversation. All right, okay. Let's see what questions are coming in here. Okay. All right, we actually don't have any new questions yet. You guys are very quiet tonight. I'm guessing you're watching the Victoria's Secret fashion show, maybe? A little bit distracted, that's okay, I'm recording it. I'll just go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the questions I got during our earlier session, particularly related to the membership. One person asked, does the membership automatically renew? That $36 for every quarter is a recurring payment, and that price will be locked in for the lifetime of your membership. So for as long as you're a member, you'll pay $36 every 3 months, and that price is guaranteed never to go up. So anytime we do a price increase in the future, you'd be completely protected from that. And that's something that I've promised to my members since the very beginning. And that's why we have folks, even those some chatting here tonight, that are paying much less than that because they've been members for so long. All right, let's see. I'm checking out the questions here. What is the best paper to print your planner on? What I like to use is a 28 to 30 pound paper, depending on what you can find. And that's just a little bit thicker than a 20-pound copy paper, so that you don't get as much either bleed through of your pen, but even not that much, but just the transparency of printing on front and back. You want to be able to print on both sides without seeing through too much. So that 28 to 30 pound turns nicely without being too thick. All right, we got some good questions coming in. Thank you. All right, how do you personally not get distracted while scrapbooking at home? So let's see, there's a couple different things that I do. Let's see here. Let's go through the list here. One thing that I've done is that I try to be really good about closing windows on my computer. I try to have the windows open that I'm working on at the moment. And so therefore, if I'm scrapbooking, the only window I might have open is Lightroom, which is where I store my photos, because I may be trying to find photos to edit or print out for my pages. And then I will turn over here to my one table, or behind me to the other table. This is where the December daily action is going on. And I will focus there on what I'm doing. And I tend to, when I'm actually in the zone, I'll maybe have music on, and I'm not very much focused on the computer at all. Another thing that I'll also do if I'm having trouble getting started is that I will set a timer for maybe even just 5 or 10 minutes just to get me started. Because when I'm feeling like, oh, I can't possibly do something tonight, or I just don't feel like it, if I can get my hands on my stuff, then it almost always comes back. It bubbles up, and I get excited and into it again. So I just need that 5 or 10 minutes to just futz around. And I did say F-U-T-Z there, just to play around and touch the things, and that really gets me going. One thing that I also do is that I accept that with a family here that distractions are going to happen, and that I may not be able to complete something in one sitting. And so being organized and having this sense of planning helps me know not only where I'm at in a project, but what I'm going to do next. So if I do need to step away, I'll have a better sense of what's the next step when I return. And I also don't hesitate to just write myself a sticky note. You were going to print out that photo next, or you need to write the journaling next, so that when I come sit down again, I remember exactly where I was. All right. All right, how about the times when you plan for a project, but you don't feel like doing that project at the moment? Interesting. I guess I touched on that a little bit. Touching my supplies and just forcing myself to start for 5 to 10 minutes usually does help. But I also, I don't hesitate to switch gears if I'm really not feeling it. There's always something else that I can do, and I like to recognize the difference between my moods. The moods that I have for photo editing and photo management are going to be a lot different than a mood I would have for making a page. And so I try to kind of embrace that and run with it. So if I'm not feeling like my design skills or my handwriting is really coming together, it may mean that my brain's more kind of in that analytical mode and it just wants to deal with information. And so then I try to go that direction instead. And when my brain's in that space, that also is a good time to organize. Let's see. All right, we've got some really good questions here. Thank you, guys. All right. I'm going to take another drink here. So when you plan your week or your day, do you include a set group of categories such as work, memory keeping, household, personal? So yes, I do. And what this tends to look like is in my Simple Scrapper Planner, we have a week on 2 pages view. And this is probably the view that's my workhorse that I use the most. And it has Monday through Sunday and columns. And what I do is I take a piece of washi tape and I put it just under the top so that I have space at the very top for appointments. And that's kind of my when things are going to happen view. And I don't have a ton of appointments, but you know, maybe a few meetings and some other types of appointments. And then under that is where I do the categories. And I'll often have a couple different categories for work, one for memory keeping and one for personal. Now, depending on the time of the year, I might split out personal at home and personal like errands away from home, depending on what's going on. So I would say within the week, I do categorize all those tasks by domain, because usually I try to focus on one domain at a time. And but what those categories are may vary week to week, because I can tell you some weeks the housework doesn't quite make it to the list. And to me, that's kind of the juggling act that we have to do, is that one priority isn't always going to make it on the list. So you have to figure out what's that bare minimum in order to get by until when that priority can jump a little bit higher on the list. Judy asked, there's an action items listed on number 3 on the handout. Can you discuss that? So what I meant for the action items are, what are the next steps that you really want to take based on this presentation? So of all the things you learned, what are the next things you want to do? Now, for those of you that aren't members, I would hope that you would consider the membership one of your action items, but it could be looking at the types of planning tools that you're using, trying to evaluate whether electronic or paper tools are working for you and where they're not. It could be looking at the types of projects that you're going to do. One of the things that maybe I didn't emphasize enough is that the planner is a specific tool for planning at all of these scales, and then the refresh workshops really is what allows you to take that big picture view and every season go in and really be intentional about what you're doing so that you can be excited about it. Because in my world, intention and a purposeful approach, this pause for analysis, is really what's going to help you stay excited and stay motivated. All right. Last question I have here is, do you have a room all to yourself to scrapbook? I have to share my space in a small apartment and I have to clean up afterwards, and I find it difficult to keep restarting. So yes, at this time I'm fortunate that I do have a space. Though I will say I share it quite a bit with my daughter. The reason there's this table behind me now is because my table here to the right is all of her current crafty endeavors. She's doing various things with popsicle sticks and foam and all these different things. So I give her supplies and she makes things, and that's what's fun about being a mom. But I totally understand the situation, and here's a couple techniques that I like to use. I like to use boxes of varying types, whether that's the pizza boxes, whether it's those plastic 13 by 13 iris boxes. Those can work really well. The let's see here, 13 by 13 envelopes can work really well, so that you can store a collection of supplies that you're currently working on and move them from place to place. Trays, like a large cookie sheet, can also work. Let's see what else. Also, the Raskog cart from IKEA is something that's become really popular because it's a mobile solution for holding supplies. And so kind of my overall approach here would be focusing on one project at a time, kind of shopping your stash for those supplies, gathering them, bring them to your work surface, whether that's your kitchen table or whatever, working on it, and then placing them back. And while I do feel like I understand that you're restarting, by narrowing it down to one project, you shouldn't have that much to restart. So it's not like you're getting everything out and having all of your supplies around you. You're having a very narrow set of supplies. All right. How do you balance wanting to get pages done simply and not necessarily a stunning layout versus wanting to break out into full creative mode with new techniques and products? I want to get stuff done and find if I stick to tried and true ways it's easier, but it can also get a bit dull. So I will say that I do some of both of those. I really try to follow my inspiration. If I'm feeling particularly artsy, I'll do some sort of painted background, and that usually kind of gets that feeling out for me and allows me to then finish the page in a more simple way. Or if I really just want to tell the story, I will emphasize first on my journaling and then let the rest of the page kind of build around it so that the meat of the page is there and the design is really what's supporting it. So I definitely follow the inspiration, and I would say I don't feel that full creative mode all the time. And so I just kind of go with it. If you wanted to follow up more on that, hopefully I've answered your question though. All right, here, let's see what else. How do you conquer clutter? So it's an interesting question here. I conquer clutter by doing two things. One, by trying hard to pick up after myself after a project. I would say the December daily stuff is not a very good example at the moment, but I'm still working on it. And I've been working on it very recently. But I do try to keep things picked up when I'm done with the project. I pick it up. And then the other thing is that I don't worry about clutter and organization the rest of the time. I try to pick up after myself, but I don't do large-scale reorganization except these periodic times of the year. And this is why the refresh workshops exist, is because it doesn't make sense to spend all of your creative time organizing, because we could just always be endlessly organizing. It also doesn't make sense to wait 6 months or a year to organize, because then you just have lots of mess and you're overwhelmed and you've got too much stuff to get rid of, and it's too much of a project. So by doing just a little bit of organizing every 3 months, you'll always kind of have that renewed sense of order in your space. And that can apply to a digital space as well. Computers can get very cluttered as well, without feeling like A, that you have to organize all the time, or B, that you just have to just ignore it and never organize. So those are the two different things that I do. Oh gosh, all right, here. Got just a couple minutes left. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I really love doing these trainings. They're a little bit out of my comfort zone as an introvert, but I know that being able to talk to you personally and share in this kind of casual training environment is really what is a really effective way of sharing some of my ideas with you and trying to impart my wisdom on you as the chief executive educator here at Simple Scrapper. If there's any more questions that want to come in, I'm happy to stay around a couple more minutes here. Check over in the chat box and see what you guys are doing. Kim mentions it seems overwhelming to commit to projects once a year. What if I change my mind? So what you're doing, Kim, is you're not committing during that kind of annual review. You're kind of creating a universe. And it's more so, what are the things that I'm not going to do? All the things that you are considering doing, you don't have to commit to them for right now. It's more about saying, I'm not going to do this other stuff. And I want to focus my energy on these types of projects, these types of techniques, these types of tools or formats. And then on those every 3-month basis, that's when you're kind of making that commitment to, this is what I'm going to get done. All right, it looks like the organization discussion really rang a bell there. All right. Again, thank you, Kim, for that. That was a really good question related to changing your mind. So hopefully that answered it with the level of commitment happening at that 3-month time scale and not the annual time scale. The larger concept is just you're creating the pool of choices for your year. All right, let's see. Well, I want to thank you all so much for spending this time with me. I do want to respect your time, particularly those of you on the East Coast who are staying up a little later to spend time with me. I really appreciate you being a part of our community here at Simple Scrapper. And if you're new, I want to warmly welcome you and hope you'll stick around and participate in other things with us. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.